Welcome to the Patel Perspective podcast. I'm your host, Harsh Patel. I have obtained a bachelor's degree in neuroscience and minors in biology and biochemistry. Through that education, this podcast allows me to deliver proper health, science, and self-improvement information to the people around the world. If you have liked any of my guests and any of my podcast episodes, the only way to show support to me and my guests is by subscribing to my YouTube channel and the social media platforms of theirs. You don't really want to miss out on any of the highly intellectually stimulating conversations that we'll be having in our future episodes. Today's guest is Dorian Soanes. Dorian Soanes is a registered dietitian in the UK who practices functional medicine and helps his clients to reverse chronic symptoms. We have already made an excellent part 1 on how to improve your thyroid system issues. I hope you check that out first before going into this podcast. But if you haven't, this podcast is about nutrition and exercise to improve your thyroid function. I learned a lot from this episode, and I hope that you learn a lot too. And now, my conversation with Dorian Soanes. Dorian, welcome back to episode 2 of you.
Thanks for having me again.
I'm really excited to talk about nutrition and other things that we will talk about. And so let's just get
100%.
started.
Yeah, totally.
How are you doing today, first of all?
Excellent. It's actually my youngest son's birthday, so he's 4 today. So
Happy birthday.
we're doing celebration later, which will be nice. And it's a nice day as well. So
don't eat too much cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
I'll try
birthday
not to.
was,
It's very difficult though.
I'm also an April baby, so well, that we share something.
How are you? Oh, really? So when was that? Have you had it or is it coming?
I had it on April 12th. So just
Oh, nice.
reversing 21. It's 12. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool.
All right. So nutrition, very, very polarizing topic sometimes
It is.
because there's so much stuff out there and like no one knows what's right, what's not, unless they have a really good background in nutrition and they know how to read research papers and they really know how to engage with patients. And so that's why you are on here. And so what are the key nutrients for the thyroid system that we really have to
Specifically
monitor?
for the thyroid? Yeah, so specifically for the thyroid, the number one is iodine, right? You literally, thyroid hormone is made from iodine. It's a molecule that's literally made of just iodine. And then selenium would be. So when you make, the process of making thyroid hormone requires a lot of oxidative stress. They say that like thyroid autoimmunity is the gateway autoimmunity, and it is the most common autoimmunity. And that might be so predisposed to autoimmune attack because of this very high oxidative stress burden that organ has just doing its job. So the immune system sees high levels of oxidative stress, and that can be a trigger for an immune attack, right? Selenium is an antioxidant. It's a powerful antioxidant, and that is what selenium does in the thyroid. It acts as an antioxidant. So secondary to those two, I'd say those are the two main ones. There isn't really a nutrient that isn't involved in thyroid function. So B vitamins play a secondary role. Vitamin A plays a secondary role as well. So pretty much all the secondary, the water-soluble vitamins, some of the fat-soluble vitamins as well, like vitamin A, play some sort of role in that cell's function. It's quite a hungry organ. I mean, you can imagine it's making thyroid hormone on a daily basis to fulfill your needs. So it does actually have a very high level of nutrient requirements.
So let's just say if someone eats a lot of fast food, like
right.
If someone eats their whole diet is made up of processed fast food, there's not much fiber, not much correct like vitamins, minerals. Like I know this is very highly individualistic. Like at what point the thyroid system like gives up?
Yeah, that's a good question, and a lot of things depend. So it's not so much what you eat; it's what you absorb. right? And even breakfast cereal, as an example, is not completely devoid of nutrients because they actually fortify it. So it's actually quite surprising how long you could go eating that and probably not have something happen if you're happy, relaxed, your digestion is working fine because you're going to be able to get nutrients from the food. I mean, I actually think if you ate like that, a lot of things would happen before necessarily your thyroid. That's what makes the individual genetic difference. I think you probably get diabetes before you you had a thyroid problem, maybe. Um, and the body's amazing at um, creating homeostasis and working around things you're not eating maybe enough of. Um, so I'm not obviously I'm not recommending that anyone should do that, but it probably wouldn't be your thyroid that was the initial problem. It would probably be your metabolic health that goes first before anything like that happens, and that would be a significant problem.
Yeah, I can see that. But how much, like, is iodine, like, is it recycled?
Iodine. So actually, you do have like a cellular store of iodine in your body, and it's interesting because so there was a phenomena back in I think it was the 1920s where in America, women in the Midwest would get these massive goiters, right? This swollen neck because their thyroid was swelling, because in the Midwest they're not near any sea. It's very landlocked, and there isn't any iodine in the soils. So the food they grow is very low in iodine. So if
Mm.
you live by the coast, even if you're not eating seafood, you still have this trace exposure to iodine that doesn't exist on very landlocked soil. So this is the true in Central Asia, Central Africa, Central Europe, anywhere where it's very, very landlocked. People tended to become iodine deficient. That was actually what sparked people putting iodized salt, right? Iodized table salt basically solved that problem. So people started to use iodized salt and they didn't get these goiters. So the goiter is just the thyroid swelling to try and do its job with insufficient nutrients. So actually, your last question you asked, how long would it take if you just ate fast food and stuff? Well, these people, that was happening to them in their 30s and 40s. Iodine deficiency is passed down generationally as well. So you have iodine stores in your body. If you're slightly low, your body's really good at working around that. So you might not know anything in your childhood, your teens, your 20s, right? Then you have a kid and you breastfeed the kid, and your body is now prioritizing your iodine stores for that kid. Iodine is essential for brain growth, right? We discussed it last time, that there is a condition called cretinism, where someone has been born with insufficient iodine, and obviously it's where we get the derogatory term cretin from, but it's basically your brain. It's like your brain is malformed essentially. So uh, that's why thyroid issues. That's why it's, for example, in the Midwest, it was women who were getting the issue more obviously than men because of things like breastfeeding and having kids and stuff like that. And I see that a lot as well, not to that same degree, not to the degree that people have necessarily bulbous necks, but they might be sort of on that iodine deficiency spectrum, especially if they're 30s, 40s, and they've had a few kids. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It's so interesting how, like, landlocked regions are deficient, like in
Right,
iodine. It's because, so it's like, it's this geographical explanation to
right. And do you know who has the highest iodine intake in their diets in the world?
Japan.
Yeah, Japan, big time.
Japan.
So
I
they
think,
have a lot of seaweed, they have a lot of seafood, followed up by Iceland, which is also so like a maritime island.
yeah. So seafood, do you think seafood is like one of the most,
Yes.
the
If you
best?
eat if you eat a good amount of seafood, you're going to
Yeah.
probably be on iodine. You don't necessarily need to eat kelp. There was a study done way back when that said like the average Japanese person, I'm not sure how accurate this was, but it was 13.5 milligrams of iodine, right? Which is an extremely high dose of iodine. To put in perspective, the RDAs are something like 250, 300 milligrams, micrograms. So there's 1,000 micrograms in 1 milligram. So 13.5 milligrams. This is like orders of magnitude more.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's insane.
yeah, totally.
So what are some other sources of iodine? Because like not everyone is going to eat seafood. I'm not a big seafood fan, but I do like shrimp and stuff.
Right.
But I'm not going to eat fish because that I probably won't prefer it. So like, well, what are some
Right.
other sources? Like that's what I want to make this like every camp. Like we have these different camps, like carnivore diet,
Right.
vegan diet.
Right.
Like
Right.
how can we give?
Well, animal products are a good source of iodine, right? You never like not as good as fish by any means,
Okay.
but they're a decent source of iodine. So actually, you could theoretically eat if you had a high animal product diet. If you have eggs, eggs are a very good source of iodine. You can dairy is also a very good source of iodine. As I said, it's in breast milk for women. It's all mammals actually. So dairy is an excellent source of iodine as well. But you don't necessarily need to eat seafood to be deficient. It depends where you're starting out from. And like I said, a lot of this is given to you by your parents. So if your parents have an issue, then you are more likely to have an issue.
Right. I
Your
have to
mother,
think about
specifically
that.
your mother.
I really have to think about that because my
Are you from? So I tell you, I've had lots of clients. So I had a guy who was born in I can get this right. I think it was Uganda. I hope I get that right with the geography. And Uganda is completely landlocked. And he came to me and he had a huge growth coming out of his neck. So we did a protocol. I did an iodine protocol with him, dosing up iodine to reduce this, and it actually shrunk visibly within months. So it was all iodine because he was landlocked.
do you know how much of that like really gets absorbed? Like if you put someone in a high dose, like if you give someone high dose iodine, like does that what's the absorption rate and what kind of factors like increase the absorption of iodine?
So the absorption of iodine is actually like a minerals. It's like salt. If
Okay.
you drink salt, it kind of doesn't matter what your gut is. The absorption rate is very high.
Okay. That makes
So
sense.
it's actually like supplementing iodine is extremely effective at any state of gut health. It's not something like B12 where you have to have specific things in the gut to actually even
Right.
absorb it. It's highly absorbable.
So it's not like calcium vitamin D situation where like you need
No, not at all.
calcium.
No, not at all. Yeah, yeah. Like that's much more complex. Yeah. So calcium, you'd want stomach acid and pretty good like health in your small intestine, and vitamin D. Bile flow is everything.
Okay. That's actually great because now like this is really easy to do because even if like you are you're following any sort of diet, like you can definitely get like enough iodine to
There have been people. So if when we're considering specifically diet and healthy people, there have been people from every corner of the globe exposed to different food types and have had excellent health, far better health than we enjoy generally speaking today in the developed world, right? So there is a million ways to skin a cat when it comes to human nutrition. We're actually amazing generalists. Some things were always true throughout the globe. So to different extents, people living in different parts of the world have been omnivorous, right? To different extents. That tends to be more meat heavy as you go further north. It tends to be more plant and fruit heavy if you go further towards the equator, where you have those things available year round. But a lot of human existence, people in Europe, for example, they evolved in an ice age, where Spain was like modern day Alaska. So they find skeletons of those people, and the number one thing that they were eating is reindeer, because they had reindeer in Spain, believe it or not. So they do from nitrogen isotope testing. So there's like a million ways to skin a cat. I don't think there's anything that there's certain things you probably should do in your diet, but there's no set thing that's going to work for everyone. That's actually, that gets reinforced to me on a daily basis in my practice. Is different things work for different people.
yeah, totally. It's sometimes it's in your it definitely is highly individualistic. Because my background is I was a vegetarian before.
Yes.
My family, my all family is vegetarian, and I'm the only probably a meathead.
So
And
you're from India, right? You're from
yeah,
India. So
yeah,
Indians are like, is a very high rate of vegetarianism.
high rate. So I always wonder if like cases of hypothyroidism are high in vegetarians compared to Like
That's
any
correct.
thyroid issues, like any metabolic thyroid, any metabolic issues are higher in vegetarians than non-vegetarians, because like if you increase your protein intake, like there's satiety signals, there's like optimal, I don't know, like you can maintain your muscle mass. And so everything is so geared towards proper metabolic health when you have a high
Yeah.
protein diet. And so I always wonder, I just want to know your thoughts about that, like difference between vegetarian and non-vegetarian diet.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, um, I'm not saying that no one does well on a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet. I think there's very good examples of people out there,
Mm-hmm.
but I think they tend to be the exception, not the rule. I mean, the iodine discussion is a good one, right? Pretty much, if you just get animal products in your diet, you're probably going to be okay for iodine. It's a trace minimal. You don't need huge amounts of it. It's in dairy, it's in eggs, it's in meat, and obviously in seafood is the best. But there's so many things like that that you have to jump through certain hoops to get adequate nutrients if you're just not going to eat that type of food. And when it comes to protein, I mean, it's really most of my clients, one of the first things we do actually is track protein. It's like sounds so simple, such a simple basic thing, but I have so many people and they track their protein and they're eating less than the RDA, right? Less than the RDA. The RDA is not what you need to be optimal. The RDA is what you need to avoid disease, right? So if you're not getting the RDA and you have disease or you have symptoms, well, go figure, right?
Yeah.
And actually, what's optimal for most people, and especially if you're in a disease state, is pretty much twice the RDA.
Yeah.
So, like if I have that's such a valuable experience for people to work out where they are and then work out what they need to do to get to be optimal or better than they are or better than they were, because actually it's such an easy win. People feel better. It doesn't matter what your condition is, even digestive issues, everything. People feel better straight away for the most part. Not everyone, but 80% of people do. And one of the reasons is you have a really high demand. Forget other nutrients for a second. You have a really high demand for amino acids in your body, right?
Mhm.
Amino acids are what protein is made of, and your body is extremely hungry for amino acids. Now, everyone focuses on leucine because leucine, I think it's over 2.5 grams for a serving of protein, and you get muscle protein synthesis. So everyone focuses on that. And that's not just so that you can be athletic or aesthetic or mechanical. There is actually a significant health benefit to having enough muscle. But, cysteine and methionine, right? They are major parts of your detoxification, right? If you want to talk about a detox diet, it's probably a high protein diet because you use amino acids for detoxification. You use the amino acids to make neurotransmitters. You use it to build hormones, serotonin, dopamine, all these things that come from amino acids.
Right.
Amino acids, glutamine, relines your gut. People supplement with glutamine. You can just get enough protein. It relines your gut. It really, like amino acids, we have no good way of storing them other than muscle, and you don't want to use your muscle. So you should have a high turnover one way or another. You want to get a good high turnover of amino acids. And, if we're comparing, like, I like to say, like, trying to get protein from plants is a bit like trying to get vitamin C from animal products. It's possible, but it's probably not optimal, right? You can get vitamin C in liver, and there's like trace amounts in eggs. And people say, people on carnivore dieters will say that like you don't need the vitamin C in high amounts. So I'm not going to make a comment on that necessarily, but you get your protein should, in my opinion, come from animal sources, and then you can get carbs, you can get fiber, you can get other nutrients, polyphenols, blah blah blah, all these things that have benefit from your plant food. But and I think that somewhere along what I've just said, an omnivorous diet with your protein from animal foods, other things from plant foods is probably optimal for the vast majority of people, right? Does that make sense to you?
Oh, that's perfectly makes sense. I believe the same thing. Like if I want to get protein, I'm not gonna get protein from like eating chickpeas. I'm gonna get
Yeah.
protein from chicken.
Yeah.
Like,
It's also, I mean, when you look at the amino acid ratios, like they're just not the same. It's a bit, the analogy I use a lot is if I said to you, I want you to build a car, and then I gave you a load of car parts, and I gave you a load of computer parts, okay? You can probably make a car out of the computer parts, right? But it's not going to be a great car. Whereas the car parts is going to be, an awesome car. We are literally, so I think that kind of illustrates my point perfectly.
That's such a good analogy. That's also so funny. I've been chuckling, but like it's just so funny how the way you explained it is just so it's so beautiful and funny and also understandable for anyone. So that's awesome. So do we supplement with iodine? I don't think there's
Most people don't need to. No,
no.
most people don't need to. There are certain circumstances where iodine can almost be like a medication in certain thyroid conditions. I actually used it myself. Just that there's risks to taking high dose iodine. When you take high dose iodine, something called the Wolff-Chakoff effect happens, where thyroid actually, paradoxically, you'd think if you take iodine, you make more thyroid hormone. You stop making thyroid hormone. And then if you keep taking high dose iodine, your body adjusts, and this normalizes after about a week. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, in some people with Graves' disease, which is the condition that I have or had, that the Wolff-Chakoff effect stays and is permanent. Right? This isn't fully understood, but it's super interesting. And before the invention of like anti-thyroid medications for Graves' disease, like methimazole or carbimazole, people used to use iodine. And actually, there's studies in Japan where they're kind of more open-minded to this stuff. When people are intolerant to carbimazole or methimazole, which is the same drug, or PTU, which is the second one they tried, they use iodine and they get very good results. So it will, in some people, it will just normalize your thyroid. But there are risks because that only happens in 60% of people. In 40% of people, you can have a reaction, or it can actually cause the hypothyroidism to be more. In addition, if you had a hot nodule instead of Graves' disease, that you're going to go thyroid toxic. It will go nuclear. So you shouldn't do that. So there's risks. So that would be a rare circumstance you might use it. In some people with hypothyroidism, it can be also fantastic. It can also be used in other issues. And there's like some good resources out on there. Like a guy, I forget his name, Dr. Abrams, I forget his full name, but he has written a book on iodine, about an iodine protocol. But I have to be honest, I use it rarely. It's not like a big rock for most people.
Yeah. That's awesome. So stay away from iodine supplements. Like, don't waste your money on supplements unless the case.
Yes, exactly. I would only do that with the supervision of a practitioner. I wouldn't just crack on and do it yourself.
Yeah.
You're using it now like a medication, and that's powerful stuff. When I was using it myself, I was taking like 25 milligrams of iodine. This is several exponential times more than the RDA.
Okay.
And by the way, I was doing that under supervision by a practitioner like me at the time. This was before I was a practitioner.
Yeah. So important note. So you have to do under supervision of a practitioner, and obviously not go to the over-the-counter store and just get a bunch of iodine. Because you saw online, saw one of the TikToks that they keep popping up. TikToks have so many like fake gurus and like they just like to spread information like crazy, and there's no basis. So
Dr. Brownstein, by the way. Sorry, I got that wrong. Dr. Brownstein is the iodine guy. I got it wrong.
Yeah. Okay. How about selenium?
So again, there would be instances where you would supplement selenium, but it would almost always be in the case of like thyroid issues, specifically for that. Selenium again is not. It's like a trace mineral. It's not difficult to get from your food. Right, especially if you have a broad diet like the sort of ones you're talking about. Selenium is pretty high in animal products again, which is maybe alluding to why you said vegetarians might have thyroid issues. Maybe this is one reason. The two biggest rocks for your thyroid are not in those foods. So I only really supplement selenium with people who have thyroid issues, and I don't think about it if they don't. And again, I'm always looking at results. If I'm not getting results with someone, maybe we need to dig a bit deeper. But for most people, getting healthier is actually a lot simpler than they think. I think a lot of people have been health's a business, like everything, right? I'm in the business too. I make my living off this too. But I think health gets complicated in order to sort of obfuscate the obvious things. And I think that people do that to sell stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Supplements, whatever the hell it is to justify this. If you believe health is actually quite simple, and for the most part it is,
Yeah.
it's harder to sell something.
Yeah. I am totally with you with that. It's good that you have that realization, because not everyone who wants to make money has that realization. Like,
No, that's true. Well, I think if you have some sort of integrity, that it will you'll have more longevity in any business.
mhm.
But I when I went into health, I was there's this Dunning-Kruger curve, right?
It
When I was at the peak of they call it the mountain of stupidity or something. You get into something and you have massive confidence. Do you know what I mean by Dunning-Kruger?
isn't it like a bell-shaped curve, or is that like totally wrong?
No, the Dunning-Kruger effect. You could Google it, but basically it's like it's confidence and knowledge, right? So it's knowledge along the bottom axis and it's confidence along the top axis. When you just get into a subject and you know very little about it, because
Okay.
you've found out so much in a short time, you have massive confidence,
Mhm.
but actually your knowledge is very low. And then you come to the realization, actually, you know nothing, and
Yeah,
then your
yeah,
knowledge
yeah, yeah.
time again over time. So it's called like the mountain of stupidity and the pit of despair or something, on the Dunning-Kruger effect. When I just got into it, I really believed health was human bodies were so complex and they need to be managed, and you have to micromanage all these processes, and you have to look after your methylation and look after this pathway. You
Yeah.
have to supplement this. And actually the exact opposite is true. Yes, your body is complex in that there are millions of reactions going on in your body on a second by second basis just to keep the lights on. But the stuff that moves your health is simple, right? Our environment is not that complicated, right? There's only so many things we can do, right? And if you start thinking things are complicated, it's immediately going to end up in this, just explosion of testing and supplements, which is probably going to get you nowhere. But the things that you can do, the signals you give your body from the outside are simple. We can only move so many ways. You can only sleep so many ways. You can only experience so much stress. You can only put so many things in your mouth. So it's those things that are really the things that move your health.
Yeah, totally. That's I believe everything you said, because I'm also like looking to be a medical professional soon in a couple of years, and like I want different perspectives to shape my thinking, like the way you're doing right now.
Yes.
So that's that's exactly what I also believe in. It's also the fact that like when you micromanage all the stuff, like you just forget about the basics, like getting enough sleep, exercising. You're just chasing away from, you're just like trying to run away from what is actually required. So,
Yeah, there is an element of that, and there's an element of that, and I think, like I said, there's a business, and then people get told, you've got this and that because I've got this, done this test, and it shows that you've got this, and most people just want to go on with their lives. They don't actually want to take as deep a dive as say I have, where I've made this my career. But uh, and there are instances, like, for example, I'll give one, like if you have mold in your house, you can do all the things right. If you have mold in your house and you have an issue with mold, you can do all the things right, and you're still going to have a problem until you get that mold. But it's still a relatively simple solution, in that you have to get the mold. The first step is you have to get out of the mold. Then you can build your health back. So there are always exceptions to this. Lyme disease is something that can complicate things, very much so. But for the most part, for like 80% plus of people, the things they need to focus on are super simple.
super simple.
And I think my practice, my clinical practice with people keeps reinforcing that, because even people who I sometimes think, well, this is a really complex case, but then they're eating 40 grams of protein a day, and then they don't, and they double that, and it makes a massive difference, and that's not even optimal. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Going back to that protein, if someone is not into weightlifting and strength training,
yeah,
I feel like there has to be some benefit to giving them a gram of protein per the pound of body weight, like the
massive,
traditional
yes,
system.
absolutely, no question. The amount, like I said, you have to eat about 30 grams of protein to get this 2.5 or whatever it is grams of leucine for muscle protein synthesis. Your muscle is not just, your muscle's an endocrine organ. It has all the hallmarks of an endocrine organ. It's not doesn't just move you and make you look good.
Yeah.
There's a bi-directional communication between your muscle and your body. Your muscle secretes something called myokines, right? Myokine is a cytokine. These are signaling molecules, and these literally balance your immune system, right? So if you have, they're like anti-cancer, they also relax your immune system in cases of things like autoimmunity. So it's not like getting stronger and building muscle. Why is that going to help my autoimmunity? Well, give it a go and see, actually, because that's actually a lot of what I do with my clients. If they can get stronger,
Yeah.
their autoimmune symptoms just kind of relax,
Yeah.
right? It really is. Having muscle is a very high expression of health. And if you look at people over 60 and you want to guess who dies first, the number one predictor is how strong they are. It's not their blood glucose, it's not their cholesterol, it's not their inflammatory markers, it's none of this. It's how strong they are,
Right.
right? So if you want longevity, right, that we all start to lose muscle, 30s and 40s. You got to fight it like your life depends on it, because it actually does. I mean, we can go on. Metabolic issues, like muscle is where you sink your energy. It's an energy sink. So all your blood glucose and triglycerides that get sucked into your muscle.
Right.
If you've got
Absorbs
metabolic
it.
health problems, get stronger or build muscle, and you can reverse them in weeks.
Right.
Literally in weeks, and not lose any weight. You can be the same weight. You can be obese and have better metabolic health markers just by increasing your muscle, because you're increasing that sink capacity to sink for cholesterol as well. So the importance of that cannot be understated, and it's not just that muscle is this nice thing to have and it will make you more athletic. It's not just that at all. It really is like a high level expression of health.
Yeah, like I don't understand the healthcare system sometimes. Primarily United States, but also elsewhere. You're in UK, so like you can obviously bring your opinion on this, because I have recently done like a series of shorts and like short form videos on like why in the healthcare system is strength training and weightlifting not like prescribed. Like it should
I think
be.
that's going to change. I actually think that's going to be changed.
That should be changed. And if I am a medical professional in the future, I want to work with doctors who believe in what I believe in. Because if I have seen a lot of improvements in increasing, I used to eat like sub 2,000 calories, like back when I was trying to lose, like very restrictive diets. When I started to build muscle, my body requires like 2,500 calories, and I'm like I'm 5'5", and I'm like 160 pounds. I'm short, and my body stature is short, but it still requires so many calories. Like I don't even, just because of adding like maybe 10 pounds of muscles over the past like 5 or 2-3 years. So it's just crazy how they prescribe you medication first. Like you have diabetes, like take insulin. Anything happens, levothyroxine.
Right.
Like, why can't we all focus on also moving? Even like cardio, like it could be beneficial, but like, I don't know, I just get into these rants when I like, because I work in the healthcare field, and it's just like, so like, why
What do you
not?
do in healthcare?
I'm a pharmacy, I'm a pharmacy technician. So I learn all these different medications.
Well, the whole system that we have now was developed in a different time. Modern Western medicine was founded in like the 1800s, where the number one killer was tuberculosis, right?
Yeah.
And there was actually a debate at that time between two French intellectuals called Louis Pasteur, who you might know from pasteurization, and Béchamps. And I talked about this on social media. So Louis Pasteur invented germ theory. Okay. Béchamps invented terrain theory. So germ theory is you get germs, that's why you get sick. Béchamps says, no, it's not to do with what infects you, it's to do with the strength of your terrain, the organism, right? The health of the organism is what's most important. Now, germ theory, both of them, the truth is both are correct, right? If you get Ebola, there's not much you can do about it, right? You're going to probably die. That's not, doesn't matter how healthy your terrain is. But if, obviously, we saw in COVID, there was a massive difference between people who were metabolically healthy and who weren't, right? They are both correct. Now, at the time, as I said, tuberculosis was a major factor. It was the biggest killer in the world. Whole families were dying of tuberculosis. So because that was the background to that debate, Louis Pasteur went, and it actually went on to develop some amazing things. So antibiotics come from germ theory. Right, vaccines come from germ theory. Germ theory allowed us to destroy infant mortality. Infant mortality used to be through the roof. Most kids wouldn't make it to their 15th birthday, right? And now that's not the case because we have antibiotics. We have ways of dealing with these infections. So it was a good thing. That was a good thing. But now we've solved, for want of a better word, like infectious disease being the biggest killer of everything. And now we have this metabolic health crisis. And now terrain theory, actually, like I said, not one or the other is true. But the point I was going on is our system is developed around this infectious disease model, where someone comes, you give them an antibiotic, and they get better because now they've got an antibiotic.
Because that's the only way. That's the only way we could treat them. Yeah.
And that does not work in chronic disease, because when you give someone with diabetes a pill, the diabetes doesn't go away. They have to keep taking that pill.
Right.
But we have this pill model based on that infectious disease model, where pills cure infectious disease. Pills do not cure chronic disease. So yeah, that's why the system is the way it is, and it's money. There's money in it, right? It's a massive ship to turn. So, but I think that I actually do think, like, doctors will talk about exercise, but it's always traditionally been cardio. Sometimes I think that resistance training is going to become more common in the next it's 10 or 20 years, which is still kind of depressing for me to say that it's going to take so long. I do think it will become a major, more prevalent recommendation.
It has to be up there. It has to be number one, like, behavioral thing you can do outside of taking medication. And also going back to that infectious disease stuff, I was talking to a pharmacist at work. Like he actually said something that really like lit my brain up. He's like, I didn't like microbiology, like studying microbiology, because all the different names and organisms and all that complicated stuff. So I was like, I don't like microbiology at all. And he's like, well, microbiology, like microbial diseases, is like you can treat them directly. Like we can treat it like very directly and not worry about like some other confounding variable.
Right.
So I really admire your perspective on this too, because I didn't know about this model. I did not know about this model. So I'm really glad you brought this up.
Yeah. Conventional medicine is just a philosophy of practice, right? The practice is based around patterns of pathophysiology that we call diseases. Mm-hmm. Right? We see patterns of pathophysiology and we name them, and we say everyone in this group with this pathophysiology, we give these treatments, medication, surgeries. So the treatment depends upon the diagnosis. Okay, what I practice, or how I've been trained, is functional medicine. Functional medicine, we care about the patterns of pathophysiology, but what's more interesting is how you got there, right? Because if we can unravel that, then we know what the root cause is, and we can improve your outcomes. Because two people who have the same condition, they got their very, very different means, right? So we need to find out what that is. So it's both of these things. Neither of them are right or wrong. They are just philosophies of practice,
right?
And my opinion on this is that the ultimate would be some sort of amalgam of the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely. So let's just like talk about what a thyroid patient can do in terms of getting protein intake and like structuring their workout routine. Like, how do you actually work with a client who has like hypothyroidism issues or hyperthyroidism issues?
So it depends where they are in terms of like their thyroid levels when they meet me. Mm-hmm. The thyroid medication is obviously a great solution to normalizing your levels. Some people, 20% of people, need some more tweaks or some more special attention on that than others. Others can just take the levothyroxine and they'll be fine. Or 80% of people are usually fine on levothyroxine once they get their dose right. That's the first thing, right? So most of my clients, when they meet me, they already do have normal thyroid hormones, because you don't look for answers until you normalize your thyroid hormones. You're
Right.
going to your endocrinologist, he's telling you to change your dose. Eventually you get the dose, and then you're going to an endocrinologist, he's saying, well, your levels are normal. And you're saying, but I still don't feel normal. So that's how most people come to me. And how I would go about it would be very carefully. I need to appreciate where they are now. You need to meet them where they are now. If you say, this is what you need to do, and it's so different from their life, it's just not going to happen. You have to take baby steps towards them, and things have to become habits.
Yeah.
Things have to become ingrained in their life. So, and you have to go with kid gloves, right? With exercise, for example, it's all about minimum effective dose, because why would we do more? If the minimum is effective, then why would we do more? People with autoimmunity have a lower tolerance to exercise than other people. And what we're looking to do is we're looking to push that tolerance up. Because if we push that tolerance up to what normal people are, they will also start to feel more normal, right? So you have to manage it according to where they are now. You have to moderate it. Less is always more. I mean, people, that's the other great thing about, say, resistance training, is how little you have to do to get effects. You can go once a week and you can get great results, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or what I do with a lot of people is I do high frequency, low volume, low intensity. So you do a couple of sets per day, and the body responds to that amazingly, because that's actually how your body is designed, to adapt to things that you do every day.
Right.
So, so working out a routine like that, and then with their diet, as I said, I get a baseline. Where are you with things, with your protein for one, and that's usually the first thing I look to correct, and then I see where they are. I don't start cutting things out. I would more like to add things first.
Right.
So
yeah.
No, get that right. Get that right. Okay, my proteins, I still don't. I feel better, but not perfect. Okay, let's look at the rest of your diet now. In terms of like composition, this is where it gets very individual. Some people do better lower carbs. Some people do better lower fats. I have seen both of those work.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, people do better with a decent dose of protein, and you've got to work out where you are on that scale. Someone would be usually most people are pretty adaptive. They don't need to be very specific. Psychological preference is extremely important.
Right.
And that can determine your outcomes. If you're on a diet and you're like, I hate this, I hate these foods, it's probably not going to work.
No. It took me like a couple of years to really understand like individualistic preferences, because adding things is much easier than removing things. Because
Right.
I like having ice cream every single day. Like, I'm not going to remove ice cream because I'm going to hate my life, and then I'm going to remove ice cream for like, let's say, a month. I'm going to add it back in and maybe go even harder. Maybe have like 3 servings of ice cream instead of I was having 1 serving a day. And
That's
so
true.
it might be really beneficial to add like maybe an extra egg during breakfast, compared to having 2, you can have 3, or like some sort of.
I literally do this. What you're saying is literally what I do.
Yeah.
Literally what I do. So I can't imagine eating more protein with this. Okay, let's start with another egg at breakfast. 1 more, and let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
That's literally what I do. And that's how and adding things is that there's a psychological component to adding rather than taking away. People do have favorite foods, and you know what? Most of the time, those foods aren't things. Food intolerances are real. They are problematic, and they are overhyped as well. Because you've got all these diet camps that will say the food that they eliminated is the greatest thing of all time to eliminate that food, right? The most common intolerance is gluten intolerance, and it has a prevalence of about 40% in the general population, right? So it's not, but the most people are not gluten intolerant. 60% of people are not gluten intolerant. That has a higher prevalence, maybe 60-70% in people with thyroid disease. But even then, it's not everyone with thyroid disease.
Yeah.
I have or had thyroid disease. I have no issues with gluten, right? Now, do I think you should eat gluten at absolutely every meal? Probably not, because that's kind of empty calories.
Yeah.
But that's not because it's gluten. I just don't think that's necessarily a good strategy. But if you were desperate to, you could probably even work out a way of doing that and still be healthy. So the food intolerance thing, like I said, and I have, you know who Michaela Peterson is?
Yes.
Yeah. So she is an example of someone who went down. She's on the carnivore diet, right? And that's all she can eat, or she gets severe symptoms. Obviously she exists. People like that exist.
Yeah.
I've never in my practice had someone like that yet. It's always been they've been able to do. I've had people who are relatively restricted to most people, but they could do broader than that.
Yeah, it's like that exception thing. Like some people will be like that, where the extreme diet will work for them tremendously. For us, if we try to go, like if we deviate too much from a natural eating pattern, like I don't think we'll see progress.
Yeah,
That's what I
I
believe
agree.
in.
I would agree with that. There's massive psychological component to this in terms of like eating and stuff like that. And most people most people who come to me have been through the mill with they've tried diets online and they've been to other practitioners and they have massive food fear. They're scared of foods. They've done food intolerance tests, which are literally not the word. By the way, never get if anyone don't get a food intolerance test. Anyone watching this they are a sham. They don't test what they're meant to be testing. They do not show food intolerances. They show what you eat the most. So the you know food fear is a stress, and in some people who've come to me, that's the stress that's even keeping them sick.
Mm.
So I've changed my view on this a lot in my practice because I thought when I started I would just be prescribing a lot of elimination diets. We just got to find the right elimination diet for this person, they'll be fine. But then I've seen how much damage like food fear has done to people, and often it's an unnecessary food fear. So just breaking that is beneficial.
Yeah, so you mentioned stress. Any last bit of motivation to de-stress like
Yeah,
ourselves for, I don't know, just it feel like I've been stressed. I was stressed a little bit for the past 3 weeks. And like when I heard in the last podcast that like stress does really like reduce your the metabolic rate, and I
yes,
was like not shocked, but like it just like it was an epiphany.
yes,
This can be true.
yes. Um, so the obvious ones, eat in a right the way we're saying we've discussed today. Sleep, and then the right dose of exercise will all improve your stress. So exercise is like outperforms antidepressants, for example, in trials. If you want to go deeper than that, my favorite thing at the moment. So I'm quite into breath work at the moment,
Okay.
and breath work has been shown to be more effective
What's your protocol?
than. Sorry,
What's your protocol? Like how do you do it?
I just do some Wim Hof breathing myself, and I actually
Okay.
have like I do group sessions with my clients, and I do one-on-ones and groups. But every once a month we do a special guest speaker at the end of the um, the last session of the month. We do a guest speaker, and this one I'm getting a friend of mine actually who's doing a PhD in breathwork, Richard Blake, the breath geek. Shout out to him. So I actually have done stuff with him before as well. So I like just doing simple Wim Hof breathing, though. I keep it simple. I'm also really into cold water hydrotherapy. I think that's an amazing cure for stress if you can bring yourself to do it. I know some people are so scared, but if you can get over that initial fear and do it, nothing seems stressful once you've done cold water. I mean, I just really do think it increases your resilience to stress. And obviously, there's a mechanism there, the mammalian dive reflex, turning on your parasympathetic nervous system. So you're giving your parasympathetic nervous system a workout. So those are my two favorite things at the moment.
You said cold water exposure, the last one? Oh
Yeah,
yeah. I've been having cold showers for the last 3 weeks.
isn't it awesome?
I'm eating more.
Yeah,
I am feeling great
yeah,
for the first 10 hours of my day, which is awesome. But
yeah,
obviously at the end of the day, like you're winding down like that.
yeah.
But I'm feeling generally awesome. I stopped doing caloric deficit and like restricting my calories too much. I'm like at maintenance and I'm eating actually anywhere from like 2,500 calories to 2,700 calories with all like
Awesome.
de-stressing and all that stuff. So it's this podcasting and bringing you on the show and like learning about this a lot. It's really helping me to like find a good balance, healthy
Do you know how
balance.
many calories I'm eating at the moment?
What?
Do you want to know how many calories I'm eating at the moment?
What? How many?
I'm eating 3,200. I'm losing about a kilo, just under a kilo a week.
Wow. That's like
I don't
3,200 feet.
I don't know what that is. I think that's years of. I have a good app, which basically I weigh myself, I put it in, so it works out your metabolic rate. I think that's years of being on a perma-bulk. I've been doing all the things. Like I've literally been trying to bulk for about 20 years, right? And now because of that, I also think I'm at like my genetic limit. Probably I've been training so long.
Yeah.
Like for me to muscle, unless I start taking exogenous hormones or something, it's probably not gonna. Is I'm not going to be putting on massive amounts of muscle. Maybe I can go on a kick here and there and get a couple of pounds here and there. But so I think I'm at my genetic limit. So my body is literally fighting me to not gain weight. And most of my training has been revolved around strength training. So my metabolic rate's like 3,800 calories, which
That's
is
crazy.
stupid. I mean, I'm not that big. I'm not that big. I'm about 5'11", and I'm not that heavy, and I'm not that muscular or anything. But I think I've reached my genetic limit. My body's fighting me, but it's good because I can lose weight, and I get hungry. I get hungry at 3,000 calories.
Yeah.
So.
It's awesome. Like I hope your son has the same metabolic rate as
Yeah.
you do right now. Hopefully you'll pass that down. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, let's wrap it up. Like any last advice for people, comments, concerns?
No, not really. I just think first principles thinking, right? If you're really struggling with your health, the basics the basics gets you 80% of the results, 80% of the time.
Right. I love that.
Really doing it. And I have so many people that come to me, honestly, and they go, I've tried everything. I've done this, I've done that, I've been to this practitioner, I've been to that, I've tried everything, and I'm just sick of it, right? And really, they're just way off on what they should be doing in terms of they're the 40 gram of protein people, right?
Yeah.
Like I eat protein because I have a chicken breast a day, and you find out it's 40 grams of protein a day. So
yeah,
but not just protein, but the other basics. So I hope that gives people hope, actually, that if they really nail down and restructure that stuff, they can get results.
It will take months, maybe years, but they'll get there.
Exactly. It's not. There's no magic. There's no magic.
The magic will only happen if you start on the basics.
Right.
Okay, then. Thank you for coming on the show, Dorian. As always, like you have given us tremendous knowledge. The more you give us knowledge, the more we feel like we're stupid. So, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Talk to you next time. See you.
Yeah, absolutely.